I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I'm Jake, a regular guy in my early 30s, a research scientist dedicated to developing breakthrough approaches for treating ADHD. My wife, Lisa, and I had been married for 5 years, and honestly, life was good, at least on the surface. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and a shared love for lazy weekends. But somewhere along the way, I started to notice little things. For starters, Lisa had become increasingly distant. She was often preoccupied with her phone, texting late into the night. At first, I shrugged it off as her just being busy with her job as a marketing executive. She often said that her work was demanding, and I believed her. But then there were the late nights at work that turned into full weekends. Initially, I supported her, thinking she was just trying to climb the corporate ladder. However, as the months passed, my gut began to churn with unease. It was subtle at first, an offhand comment from a colleague, a slip of the tongue, a lingering glance I caught at a social gathering. Friends would say, "Lisa seems different," and I'd laugh it off, insisting that I was just being paranoid. But deep down, the whispers of doubt crept into my mind, gnawing at me. The real revelation came when I stumbled upon a series of text messages on her phone. We were having a relaxing evening, a rare moment of quiet in our busy lives. Lisa had fallen asleep on the couch, and I decided to check my email. As I reached for my phone, hers buzzed beside me. I glanced at the screen and saw a text notification from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me. I quickly opened the message to find flirty exchanges, heart emojis, and the kind of language you don't send to someone you're not romantically involved with. My heart raced, and I felt a lump form in my throat. My first instinct was to wake her, to demand answers right then and there. But something stopped me. I didn't want to confront her in a moment of anger without having all the facts. Instead, I made the decision to gather more evidence. For the next few weeks, I watched her like a hawk, noting the small changes, the way she would giggle at her phone or how she would spend late nights claiming to be finishing a project. I felt like a detective, piecing together the puzzle of her betrayal. Every time I saw her smile, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. The tipping point came when I found her diary tucked away in a drawer. I had never pried into her personal things. We had a mutual understanding of privacy. But now, with my heart pounding, I opened it, hoping it would clarify my suspicions. What I found inside shattered me. There were entries detailing intimate moments with someone named Mark, how she felt alive again, how he made her feel desired, all the things I thought I was providing her. The anger bubbled inside me like molten lava, and I knew I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I confronted her that night. When she walked in, I could see the surprise on her face as I stood there, her diary in hand, the evidence I had gathered laid bare before us. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Her face paled as I handed her the diary. I watched. Her read the words that had cut through me like glass, and then the excuses began to tumble out of her mouth. "Oh, Jake, that's not what you think. It's just a phase. I was feeling lonely, and Mark was just a friend." Even as she spoke, I could see the panic in her eyes. She tried to downplay everything, insisting it didn't mean anything serious. But I was no longer interested in her justifications. I had seen enough. The confrontation was brutal. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to explain herself, but I felt no sympathy. I was hurt, angry, and confused. I had dedicated my life to my work and our marriage, only to find out that while I was focusing on my passion, she was focusing on a different kind of distraction. As she sat there, sobbing, the weight of betrayal pressed down on my chest, and I realized that this was about more than just her infidelity. This was about trust, commitment, and the foundation of what we had built together. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt the anger shift to deep sadness, not just for what she had done, but for what our marriage had become. But I also knew I had a choice to make. I could either let this define me or use it as a catalyst for change. The day I discovered her secret was the day I decided to reclaim my focus, not just on her but on my own life and priorities. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The next few days were a blur. I felt like I was floating through life, numb to everything around me. Work at the lab became a welcome distraction as I threw myself into my research, burying my emotions under piles of data and experiments. I knew I needed to make a decision about my marriage, but I didn't want to rush into anything while I was still reeling from the shock of Lisa's betrayal. Lisa was desperate for forgiveness. She called me at work, sent texts filled with apologies, and even showed up unannounced at the lab one afternoon, tears streaming down her face. I remember the way the fluorescent lights reflected off her red eyes, amplifying the sorrow etched on her face. "I'm so sorry, Jake. Please, let's talk," she pleaded. But what was there to say? Every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the lies, of the intimate moments she had shared with Mark while I was unaware. I felt like a fool, believing we were building a life together while she was weaving a secret tapestry of deceit behind my back. After a couple of days of silence, I realized I needed to confront her about what would happen next. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, a neutral ground, where I could decide whether to give her another chance. I arrived early, my mind racing with thoughts of how this conversation would unfold. I was torn between wanting to salvage our marriage and the anger that bubbled just beneath the surface. When Lisa arrived, she was visibly anxious, fidgeting with her hands and avoiding eye contact. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to make things right. I love you, Jake." Hearing those words felt like being punched in the gut. Did she really love me, or was it just guilt? "Talking, you love me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You love me, yet you were sleeping with another man. You can't just throw that word around now. It doesn't mean anything after what you've done." I could see the weight of my words settle on her. "I know what I did was awful, but it was a mistake. I was feeling lost, and I didn't know how to communicate that to you. Mark was just a distraction. He didn't mean anything." "You're the one I want to be with," she insisted, her voice rising slightly with desperation. As I listened, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still trying to minimize her actions. It felt like she was more concerned about losing me than actually understanding the damage she had caused. "You don't get to decide what this means for us, Lisa. You made your choices, and now I have to make mine," I replied, my voice firm. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken emotions. I felt the anger in me shift yet again, morphing into a resolve. I needed to take my life back, and I had to do something drastic to reclaim my sense of self. "I think we need to separate for a while," I said, shocking both her and myself. Her face fell, and I felt a pang of guilt wash over me, but I had to think about my own health and happiness. I couldn't just pretend everything was okay. "A separation," she echoed, her voice breaking. "Is that really what you want?" "I need time to think about what I want and to process everything that happened," I replied, my heart racing. "I can't just go back to the way things were. I need to know if I can trust you again or if it's time to move on." Lisa nodded, tears spilling over her cheeks. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to show you I can change," she said, her sincerity shining through her despair. But in that moment I realized that no matter her intentions, I had to focus on myself first. The days that followed were filled with a mix of emotions. I moved into a small studio apartment nearby, feeling both liberated and lost. My life had changed in an instant, and I was forced to confront feelings I had pushed aside for too long. I had always poured myself into my work, but now I found solace in my research more than ever. It became my refuge, grounding me as I dissected the complexities of human behavior, focusing on methodologies that could potentially aid others with ADHD. There was a strange comfort in this solitude, a chance to reconnect with my own identity, unattached from the woman I had once thought I knew. I began to explore my own priorities, the things that truly mattered to me, and that included not just my work but also my mental well-being. I started exercising, cooking new meals for myself, and exploring hobbies I had abandoned, things I truly enjoyed but had neglected in the chaos of our life together. As the weeks turned into months, I began to find clarity. I invested time in understanding the emotional impact of betrayal, not just from my perspective, but also through research on relationships and trust. This academic approach helped me navigate my feelings and prepared me for the inevitable conversations about our future. Yet even as I began to heal, the specter of Lisa's infidelity loomed large. I found myself wrestling with questions. Could I ever trust her again? Did I even want to? The answer wasn't clear, but the journey toward finding my own answers had truly begun. As I settled into my new routine, the changes in my life began to reveal themselves, like the slow unfurling of a flower. I started to breathe again, and with each breath, I felt less like a victim of Lisa's betrayal and more like a man reclaiming his life. I began to reflect deeply on what had led to our issues, and I realized that while her infidelity was a blatant breach of trust, it also highlighted the cracks in our marriage that had been left unattended for far too long. The separation was challenging, no doubt. I had good days and bad days, but I was determined not to let the hurt consume me. I started seeing a therapist to help navigate the emotional roller coaster, and those sessions turned out to be invaluable. I learned about the importance of communication, trust, and how both partners need to actively engage in a relationship. I realized that while Lisa had betrayed me, I too had become complacent and distant in our marriage, wrapped up in my work and neglecting the emotional connection we once shared. Despite the separation, I kept in touch with Lisa. It was complicated, a tangled mess of feelings and unresolved issues, but we agreed to meet every few weeks to talk. Our discussions were raw and honest. She was remorseful, and I could see that she was trying to understand the damage she had done. But as we spoke about our feelings, I also noticed that she seemed to have difficulty grasping the depth of my hurt. She would often shift the focus back to her guilt, making it hard for us to truly address the consequences of her actions. During one of our meetings, she laid her heart out before me again, recalling memories of our early years together. "Jake, I miss those days. We were so happy," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I want to get back to what we had." I felt a pang of nostalgia. Those memories were precious and I missed them too, but I knew I had to be cautious. "Lisa, I want that too, but we can't just go back to the way things were. I need to see real change. Trust can't be rebuilt overnight, and it certainly can't be rebuilt with just words," I said, my voice steady. She nodded, understanding the gravity of what I was saying. "I know it'll take time. I'm willing to do the work. I love you, Jake," she reiterated, her sincerity evident. But with every declaration of love, I still felt a nagging doubt, the lingering question of whether her actions had truly stemmed from a moment of weakness or if there were deeper issues at play. As I continued to explore my own feelings, I found myself leaning into my work with renewed vigor. I had been researching innovative approaches for treating ADHD, but now I was also focusing on how relationships could impact mental health. I began designing studies that looked at the connection between emotional well-being and relationship satisfaction. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. While my professional life was thriving, my personal life felt like it was in shambles. One evening, while I was deep into my work at the lab, a colleague named Sarah, who had been incredibly supportive throughout my ordeal, approached me. She had noticed my newfound passion and offered to help with my research. "You're doing something amazing here, Jake. It's important work," she said, her enthusiasm contagious. I appreciated her support, but there was also a subtle shift in our dynamic. As we spent more time together, I began to feel a spark that I hadn't anticipated. It was confusing, especially given the chaos in my heart regarding Lisa. Sarah was kind, intelligent, and genuinely interested in my work. I found myself laughing more and enjoying the connection we were building, but guilt washed over me like a cold wave. How could I move on when my marriage was still hanging in the balance? The emotional turmoil intensified as the weeks turned into months. I would have moments where I thought I could forgive Lisa and rebuild our life together, only to be struck down by the memories of her betrayal. On the other hand, the connection I felt with Sarah was equally intoxicating and terrifying. I didn't want to jump into a new relationship just to escape the pain of the old one, but I also didn't want to close off the possibility of happiness. One evening, after a particularly intense discussion with Lisa about our future, I found myself at a local bar trying to unwind. The atmosphere was lively, with laughter and chatter all around. It was a welcome distraction, but my mind was still racing with thoughts of Lisa and my unresolved feelings. That's when Sarah walked in, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. She approached, and we struck up a conversation, slowly easing into laughter and banter. It felt so good to be with someone who wasn't tied to my past pain, but as the night progressed, I felt that familiar guilt creep back in. Eventually, we both ended up at my apartment and the tension hung thick in the air. "Jake, I really enjoy spending time with you," Sarah said, looking at me with a mixture of hope and hesitation. I felt the same way, but my heart was still tied to Lisa. "I don't want to complicate things for you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I understand. But you deserve to be happy too," she replied, her eyes searching mine. I could feel the pull between us, but I also knew I had to tread carefully. I wasn't ready to let go of Lisa entirely, regardless of our struggles. As the evening approached its end, a question hung unanswered in the air. How could I reconcile my feelings for Lisa with the growing connection I felt with Sarah? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing. I was on the brink of a decision that could change everything. The path ahead was murky, filled with both opportunity and trepidation. I needed to find a way to confront the truth of my feelings and figure out what I truly wanted moving forward. The days after that night with Sarah were fraught with confusion. My emotions were like a turbulent sea, crashing against each other, and I found myself lost in the chaos. On one hand, there was Lisa, the woman I had built a life with, who had shattered my trust but was desperately trying to make amends. On the other, there was Sarah, who brought a lightness into my life that I hadn't felt in ages, someone who didn't carry the baggage of my past but was nonetheless part of my present. I decided it was time to meet with Lisa again to discuss where we stood. We chose a small park for our conversation, a place where we had spent many happy afternoons in the past. As I watched her approach, I felt both warmth and apprehension. She looked as beautiful as ever, but I also saw an edge of vulnerability in her posture, a sign of the emotional toll this situation was taking on her. "Thank you for meeting me here," she said softly as we settled onto a bench. "I've been doing a lot of thinking and I wanted to talk about our future." "Me too," I replied, my voice steady. "But we need to be honest with each other. I don't want to hold back anymore." Lisa nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know I've hurt you in a way that's hard to comprehend. I've been reflecting on everything and I want to work through this, but I also want to understand what you need," she said, her sincerity evident. I took a deep breath, weighing my words carefully. "What I need is some clarity. I can't just forgive and forget. I need to know if this is something you truly want to fix or if it's more about feeling guilty for what you've done." Her expression shifted and I could see the conflict within her. "I want to fix it, Jake. I love you. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I was feeling neglected and I know that doesn't excuse my actions, but I want to do what it takes to regain your trust," she said, her voice breaking. "Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You need to understand that while I may still love you, I'm also scared. Scared of being hurt again, scared of repeating the same mistakes." Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I'm willing to go to counseling, to do whatever it takes to show you that I can be the partner you deserve. Just please don't give up on us." As I looked into her eyes, I felt a wave of sympathy wash over me. I wanted to believe her, but I was also acutely aware of how fragile our situation was. "I'm not giving up just yet, but I need space to think. I need to figure out what I truly want," I said, my voice steady. After that conversation, I found myself wrestling with the idea of reconciliation. Could I truly forgive her and move forward? I felt torn between the history we had built and the reality of her betrayal. The emotional weight was heavy, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. As for Sarah, our professional relationship began to deepen, and I couldn't deny the connection we shared. We collaborated on projects that went beyond my initial research, digging into the intricacies of emotional health and relationships. Our late nights at the lab became more frequent, filled with laughter and meaningful discussions. I found myself looking forward to those moments, but each time I was with her, my guilt about Lisa resurfaced. One evening, while we were working late, Sarah turned to me and asked, "What do you want, Jake? Where do you see yourself in the future?" Her question struck me like a lightning bolt. I had been so focused on surviving the present moment that I hadn't taken the time to envision what I truly wanted. "I want to be happy," I replied honestly, "but happiness feels complicated right now." Sarah leaned in closer, her eyes searching mine. "It's okay to want more for yourself, you know. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel fulfilled, not someone who brings you pain," she said gently. Her words resonated with me, causing a whirlwind of emotions to swirl within. I realized that I had been holding onto the idea of my relationship with Lisa out of habit, fear, and a sense of obligation. But Sarah was right. I deserved to be happy, and I needed to confront the reality of my feelings. The following days were pivotal. I spent hours reflecting on what I wanted my life to look like. I envisioned a future filled with trust, respect, and mutual growth. I thought about the kind of love that didn't come with a shadow of betrayal looming over it, and it struck me that I had the power to choose the direction of my own life. Confronting my emotions led me back to Lisa. I called her one evening and asked if we could meet again. "I've had a lot of time to think, and I want to be honest with you about everything." We agreed to meet at the same park, a place where our happier memories clashed with the reality of our current situation. When I arrived, Lisa was already there, packing nervously. Her face lit up when she saw me, but I could also see the apprehension in her eyes. "Jake, I've missed you. I've been waiting for this conversation," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've missed you too, but this isn't about nostalgia. I need to be upfront with you," I began. As I spoke, I laid out my feelings, my hurt, my anger, and my confusion. I told her about the connection I felt with Sarah and how it forced me to reevaluate my own happiness. "I don't want to rush into anything, but I can't ignore the fact that I need to focus on what's best for me," I said firmly. Lisa listened intently, her expression shifting from hope to despair. "Are you saying you want to be with her?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It's not as simple as that. I don't want to make any decisions without fully understanding what I want first," I replied, trying to keep my tone gentle yet firm. "I think we both need time to figure ourselves out." The silence that followed was heavy. Lisa's tears fell freely as she absorbed my words. "I don't want to lose you, Jake. I'll do anything to win you back," she pleaded, but I could see the realization dawning on her that she might have already lost me. As I watched her, I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness, not just for her but for the love we once shared. It was a painful but necessary part of this journey. I needed to embrace the uncertainty to find my way to the clarity I sought. "I need time, Lisa. I don't know what the future holds, but I have to prioritize my own happiness, even if that means taking a step back from us," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. As I walked away from that conversation, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't have all the answers, and my heart was still tangled in a web of confusion, but I was moving forward with intention. It was a daunting path ahead, and I was ready to face it, no matter where it led me. In the weeks that followed my conversation with Lisa, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The separation began to feel less like a punishment and more like an opportunity for growth, even if it was painful. I poured myself into my work with renewed vigor, and my collaboration with Sarah became a significant part of my daily life. The more we worked together, the more I appreciated her insights and her genuine investment in my research. But even as I thrived professionally, I couldn't shake the lingering feelings I had for Lisa. Every time I received a text from her, a part of me hoped it would be an apology or a declaration of love that would change everything. Instead, most of our conversations revolved around her trying to prove that she had changed, that she was committed to doing the work to regain my trust. One day, after a particularly long day at the lab, I decided to call Lisa. I felt a mix of apprehension and hope as the phone rang. When she picked up, her voice was tentative, as if she were walking on eggshells. "Hey, Jake," she said softly, "how have you been? I've been okay keeping busy, I replied, but the truth was more complicated than that. I wanted to talk about us. Okay, she replied, her tone shifting to one of hope. I've been waiting for this conversation. Look, I need to be honest. I still care about you, but I also feel like I'm starting to move forward in my life, I admitted. Spending time with Sarah has made me realize that I need to think about what truly makes me happy. Is this about her? Lisa asked, her voice tinged with desperation. Because I can't handle the thought of losing you to someone else. It's not just about her, Lisa. It's about me too. I'm not the same person I was when we first got married. I've changed, and I can't go back to the way things were without acknowledging what happened, I explained. We spent the next hour discussing our feelings, the state of our marriage, and where we both stood in the aftermath of her betrayal. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, as she expressed her desire to work through our issues, but I also sensed the undertone of fear in her words. Jake, I love you. I want to rebuild our marriage, she said, her voice cracking. I know I messed up and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I believe we can get through this if you give me a chance. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I appreciate that you want to make things right, but I need time to figure out what I want. I can't promise that we'll end up together again, I replied. Her silence was deafening. Okay, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I understand. Just know that I'm here and I'll wait for you. I'm willing to do the hard work. As we ended the call, I felt a mixture of relief and heaviness. While I appreciated her willingness to fight for our marriage, I couldn't shake the feeling that our love was no longer built on the solid foundation it once had. I realized I was standing at a crossroads, and whatever decision I made would have lasting consequences. The following days were filled with contemplation. I spent hours reflecting on my past with Lisa and the potential future I could have with Sarah. Each time I was with Sarah, I felt an emotional connection that I hadn't experienced in years. It was refreshing, exhilarating even. But guilt clouded my mind, causing me to second-guess myself at every turn. One evening, while Sarah and I were working late at the lab, I found myself staring at her as she animatedly discussed our latest findings. There was something so genuine about her, a warmth that drew me in. I felt a pull towards her that I hadn't anticipated. Jake, are you okay? She asked, noticing my distracted demeanor. You seem miles away. I'm just trying to figure things out, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. It's complicated. Relationships can be messy, but you deserve to be with someone who makes you happy, she replied, her sincerity evident. I want you to be happy. The way she looked at me made my heart race. I felt drawn to her, but I also felt the weight of my obligations to Lisa. It was becoming increasingly difficult to navigate the emotional landscape of my life. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself torn between two worlds, one where I could rebuild with Lisa, and another where I might forge a new relationship with Sarah. I was haunted by memories of what Lisa and I had shared, but I was equally aware that those memories were tainted by her betrayal. The night before I was scheduled to meet Lisa again, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. My mind raced with the possibilities of both futures. I knew I had to make a choice, and it needed to come from my heart, not my head. The next day, as I walked to the park where we had agreed to meet, my heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. I was prepared to lay everything on the table, to confront the reality of our relationship and make a decision about our future. When I arrived, Lisa was already there, her expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. We sat down on the same bench where we had shared so many memories, and I could see the weight of our situation etched on her face. Jake, I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, her voice trembling. I know I've hurt you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. I love you, and I want us to be a family again. Taking a deep breath, I knew this was the moment to be honest. Lisa, I care about you, but I need you to understand that I've changed. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's not. I've also been spending time with someone else, and I want to be honest about that. Her face fell, and I could see the crush of realization wash over her. Is it Sarah? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I replied, my heart heavy. Being with her has made me realize what I truly want in life. I don't want to rush into anything, but I also can't ignore my feelings. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I could sense the heartbreak in her eyes, and it tore me apart. I never wanted to hurt you like this, Jake, she said, her voice breaking. I know I made a terrible mistake, and I wish I could take it back. I just want a chance to prove that I can be better. I don't know if we can go back to the way things were, I said gently. What we had was beautiful, but it's been tainted. I need to prioritize my happiness, and I can't do that while holding on to the past. As I spoke, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew it was time for both of us to move forward, whatever that looked like. Maybe we both need to find out who we are without each other, I said, feeling the finality of my words. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded, and I knew this was a moment neither of us would forget. We had our memories, our love, but we were standing at the edge of a new chapter, one that required us to let go of the past and embrace the uncertainty of the future. As we parted ways that day, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. I was ready to face what came next, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. It was time to prioritize my happiness and build a life on my own terms. Whatever the future held, I was determined to embrace it fully. In the days following my conversation with Lisa, I felt an unfamiliar sense of freedom. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, and although it was painful to let go of what we had shared, I realized that it was necessary for both of us to move forward. I spent more time at the lab, diving deeper into my research and fostering my relationship with Sarah, who had been incredibly supportive throughout this entire process. At first, Sarah and I kept things professional, focusing on our work and the projects we had embarked upon together. But as we spent more time together, I found myself drawn to her warmth and kindness. There was an undeniable chemistry that ignited between us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were building something special. One afternoon, as we wrapped up a long day at the lab, Sarah turned to me, a playful grin on her face. "So, what are you doing this weekend? Want to take a break from work and maybe grab dinner?" I hesitated for a moment. The thought of getting involved with someone new was both exciting and terrifying. But the truth was, I was ready to embrace happiness again. "I'd love that," I replied, my heart racing at the prospect of moving forward with her. That weekend, we went to a cozy restaurant downtown, and as we shared a meal, I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time. The conversation flowed easily, and I felt a connection with Sarah that left me feeling hopeful. She listened intently as I spoke about my research, my passions, and my dreams for the future. For the first time in what felt like ages, I was just me. As the night went on, our hands brushed against each other and I felt a spark of electricity. I looked into her eyes and saw understanding and acceptance, devoid of the fear and pain I had experienced with Lisa. The moment felt right, and I leaned in to kiss her, feeling a rush of relief and excitement. Afterward, we took a stroll through the park, and I knew deep down that this was the beginning of something new. I was ready to embrace this new chapter of my life. Sarah was refreshing, a breath of fresh air after the storm of my past. Despite the joy I felt, I still had moments of reflection. I thought about Lisa and the memories we had shared. I felt a pang of sadness for the love that had once been there, but I also recognized that it was time to let go. I had to focus on my own growth and happiness. As the weeks went on, I continued to explore this new relationship with Sarah. We shared countless laughs, explored new interests, and supported each other's goals. It felt good to be in a partnership where both of us could grow and thrive. My emotional landscape began to shift. The pain of betrayal slowly transformed into a lesson learned about love, trust, and self-worth. One day, while having coffee in a small cafe with Sarah, I realized how far I had come. I looked at her and smiled, feeling grateful for the journey that had led me to this moment. "You know," I said, "I never thought I could feel this way again after everything that happened with Lisa." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You deserve to be happy, Jake. It's okay to let go of the past and embrace what's in front of you." Her words resonated with me, and I felt a warmth spread through me. Over time, I also found myself more open to discussing my past experiences. I learned how to communicate better, both in my personal life and professional relationships. I became a better partner because I was no longer harboring resentment or fear. Instead, I was focused on building a healthy foundation with Sarah, grounded in trust and mutual respect. Eventually, I reached a point where I felt ready to reach out to Lisa one last time. I wanted to close that chapter of my life respectfully, to thank her for the good times we had shared, and to acknowledge the lessons I had learned from our marriage. I sent her a message asking if she would like to meet for coffee. When we met, I saw the same vulnerability in her eyes, but there was also a sense of acceptance. "I'm glad you reached out, Jake," she said softly. "I've been doing a lot of work on myself too. I realize now how my actions affected you, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused." "I appreciate that, Lisa. I've been reflecting too," I replied, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. "I want you to know that I've moved on. I'm building a new life for myself, and I hope you find happiness too." We exchanged a few more encouraging words, both understanding that we had been part of each other's journey but that we were now on separate paths. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of relief. I had confronted my past, acknowledged the hurt, and was finally ready to embrace my future. Looking back, I realized that while the experience had been incredibly painful, it had ultimately transformed me. I learned the importance of self-care, communication, and trust, and I had found the courage to prioritize my own happiness. As I continued my journey with Sarah, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. I knew that life would continue to present challenges, but I was ready to face them with an open heart, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. The road to healing had been long, but it had led me to a place of renewed strength and resilience. I was ready to embrace whatever came next with gratitude and optimism.